A lot of people have been asking me what are my thoughts on the meta and what's going on in Mythic Plus right now. And Blizzard has responded to this. They're doing some major nerfs to pretty much all the top specs, quote unquote. But my answer to this question has always been, one of nuance, because I feel like the problem that a lot of people have is they approach the game like that it's like some competitive ladder game where only you playing the game are the only one to consider, and it's not like a role playing, it's not an RPG game where you play a specific character and you identify with that character and you make long lasting impressions on that character. And I think that's probably the biggest difference between how WoW used to be played and how it's played now, even though WoW has always been a game where people kind of obsessively min max and kind of over analyze certain parts of the game that they don't really need to. It's used to be more like a role playing game where people would play a mage and they were a mage main, and that was who they min maxed. And if mage sucked, then they were, well, we're just not very good right now, but we're still a mage. You know what I mean? Now people are constantly talking about re-rolling. I get it. Gearing has never been easier. Alts have never been easier to maintain, but you're taking away a lot of the interest of the game in my eyes, and that's something I will never be really a part of. I play a Blood Death Knight, like that's who I am. I have identifying like characteristics in the game as a Death Knight, as a Blood Death Knight, and same thing with Paladin. Like those are the characters I love and I will always play. So whether or not Guardian Druid or any other tank is overpowered, it has really no impact on me. I don't really care about it. I've never at any point felt like I was competing against other human beings playing the character, playing their characters. I'm just competing against the game as the Death Knight. That's the way I look at it, and I think I would encourage everybody to play the game that way, because I'm sure that you can have fun playing the game the way a lot of people are playing it, but I don't think a lot of people are having fun. Like when I see the people complaining about the meta, it doesn't strike me as somebody who's enjoying the game. You know what I mean? Like they're not enjoying the game itself, and they're not even probably playing the game itself. They're more playing the whole game two thing that we heard talked about, where you're basically just playing this social, like, oh, I'm trying to beat this guy over here. He's slightly better than me, so I need to change something to beat him. That's, not the way I've ever played the game. And I think like when you start playing the game that way, you start taking it so serious that it's probably impinging on the enjoyment of it. So I would be cautious on that. And I think too many people end up falling into this habit simply because, like, you see like influencers describing this behavior or embarking on this journey of the game, like not being part of their life anymore, and just the competitive avenues being the only thing that matter to them. And that makes sense if you're trying to compete in the MDI and win money or become like some renowned player of the game. But if at the same time you're making it less fun for you, and then you're not actually earning money from it, well, you're just on the road to burnout, right? That seems kind of obvious to me, but I guess a lot of people don't agree. But yeah, anyway, I don't care. So we're gonna take a look at these notes though, because I do have some commentary on it. Regardless, like it's still a video game that needs to be balanced, regardless of whether or not people play that way or not. And also, one historic note here. I think this might be the first hotfix we have seen for Dragonflight that does not include a Blood Death Knight damage nerf or Blood Death Knight damage buff. Interesting, right? So yeah. Anyway, so some changes to some underperforming specs, I guess, like Unholy, which it's just our AOE, I believe this is. I don't really know much about it, but there's a couple specs that got buffed, like Marksman Hunter and Rep Paladin, and then Outlaw, and I guess Warrior, a little bit of Warrior buffs too, that are good. But what we see here is almost exclusively nerfs to the God comp, quote unquote. That's what people are calling it now all of a sudden. And I have to say, like, this is what you get. I mean, obviously it's overpowered. It should be nerfed, but like they could have done this better. You know what I mean? But this is a knee-jerk reaction to everybody saying what they've been saying between the great push and the MDI and all these different things. It's just kind of just what you get. You know what I mean? Like you put these specs on this crazy pedestal, And now Blizzard has to do what I would consider an optics nerf. This is not necessarily a nerf because these specs need a 10% nerf. This is a spec. This is a nerf because these specs are getting too many eyeballs on them to the point that it's imbalancing the gameplay. You know what I mean? Whether or not those specs are as overpowered as people make them out to be, I think is debatable on its own. But it certainly is. There's bigger problems than you know what I mean. Like, these changes are not going to solve the imbalance between the specs. This is to get your average player thinking like, well, Shadow Priest is dead, I'm not specking into it now. You know what I mean? That's what they're doing with these are optics nerfs. That's the way I've always looked at it. But so Guardian Druid, known for its insane utility right now, huge group healing, and very good defense, and I guess very good offense, especially inside CDs. So they're just nerfing a couple spells. Now, I don't know a ton about it, but I'm pretty sure that Thrash's damage directly relates to defense as well. So that's also a defensive nerf. I don't know how big of a nerf either of those things are, but like, again, is that really why Guardian Druid is top pick right now? I don't know. I don't think so. I really don't. So that's just an optics nerf, right? Like, that's not going to make the spec functionally weaker. It's not going to make it so much weaker that it's not going to be the best tank in the keys, right? Like, the weird thing about this is, if Guardian is suddenly doing more damage, then why didn't they change Vengeance? Like, before this patch, Vengeance's damage was absurd. And I think it still is, but I think there's some opportunity cost I've heard talked about where, like, your damage is just, you have to choose either damage or defense. I think that's a healthy choice for a tank, but regardless, we know the choice being made for many. Augmentation is the one that is the hot topic. Now, when I talk about specs being like interchangeable, like, I've been saying, like, I really don't think this meta is as defined as people make it out to be. Like, I get it. Shadow Priest especially has some very, very, very irreplaceable utility, and their damage is very good, and Fire Mage's damage is also very good, but it's not so much better than the middle, like the average picks, that it's actually like mandatory. Ogvoker, that one's mandatory. That's the one, and you're on a knife's edge here because there's no real way to change that. You gave them, and they even acknowledge this, augmentation is adding a significant amount of damage to the party while also providing strong utility and survivability. Yeah, that's the spec you designed, by the way. For this week, we'd like to reduce some of the damage contributions, and it says for this week. Makes me think that more nerfs are on their way for this spec, which is a little scary because I said many times, if this spec is not above average, it will be useless. Nobody will play it. There'll be very few people who want to play a build like that, that will actually be good players. Because I think it is catching a lot of bad players just re-rolling to it because it's so easy to get spots in this key, in all keys. And yeah, I think like good players will not play it if that's the case. So it kind of has to be overpowered to still be useful. But either way, I think what we see with Ogvoker is a clear indication of why you probably don't want to add a brand new paradigm and a specialization in the middle of a season. Oh, you could add it if you want, but then just give up on that season being balanced, right? Like, they added it, like 4 weeks before the MDI started or whatever, the Great Push started. It's like, what'd you think was going to happen? You know what I mean? I don't, it's kind of weird. I like to believe that they know what they're doing there, but it doesn't seem like a good time to add it. Now, the counterpoint to that is like they're adding it because they wanted it to be like a dry run so they can balance it for season 3. And if so, then hey, good. Let's see how that goes out. But I just don't think this specialization is ever going to work. The game is too divided now between the whole game 1 and game 2 thing, like we talked about back in the beta, where people are they're more worried about their person and global like kind of status in the game than the actual gameplay, than the actual RPG elements of the game. They don't pick a specialization because they enjoy it and want to spend a long period of time playing it. They pick it because they believe it will somehow elevate their ability to play a game at, frankly, most people at a mediocre level. It's like, it just doesn't really matter. You should always prioritize fun in this game. And, like I said, I get it. People have fun min-maxing the game that way, but then they're on the forums and on making videos complaining about the meta. it doesn't look like a healthy way to play the game. I really don't feel like it is, but people keep trying to convince me otherwise. Anyway, like we said, marksman AoE buffs. I think these are more, I don't know anything about marksman, but again, I don't think it's ever going to solve the real problems that some of these specializations have, right? And we see Fire Mage, massive. These are all AoE spells. I assume they're all useful AoE spells. I don't know exactly how much it's going to add up to in the course of a key. From what I can tell, like really, really no change to their single target, right? Very minimal changes to their single target. But I guess the one, like Mage is like the most replaceable. That's what we've agreed upon. The most replaceable in this comp of 5 players. And I think their damage, that's like the one thing. Like Fire Mage's damage is just kind of like, it's hard to use, first of all, it seems, because I have some very bad mages in keys as well. But the ones who do really well, they're cruising. So, and then Frost getting some changes too. We have Holy Pally. If you guys didn't see, I played Holy Pally this week, and absolutely overpowered. I've never played an alt that felt more overpowered. I upgraded 420s, hashtag blaze it, and it was like really easy mode. Like honestly, just a joke mode. Compared to that Druid when I played it, it was like night and day. You literally, like, Daybreak should just not be in the game. That spell should just be removed. Whoever put that in is just not thinking clearly on what. It's just really, really overpowered. And I don't have any, like, I did not min max that spell. Like, I did not track anything about it. I barely used it. Like, you know what I mean? And it's still overpowered. It's just way too, like, it's like power creep. It's like the spell does tons of healing, gives you insane healing over the next few globals, and it gives you mana back. Like, what is going on here? Who came up with this? But yeah, all healing reduced by 5%, and then individual nerfs as well to some talents and stuff. Big thing though, Blessing of Summer should just be removed. I mean, I like the idea of it, dude, but again, what other healer has something like that? You know what I mean? We're sitting there talking about the same thing. Ogvoker, what other spec has something like all that damage they bring, or all that damage reduction they bring? Nothing. Balanced Druid with trees, right? When do you see them playing? You same thing with Shadow Priest, who has the ability to skip all these mobs and mass dispel all these dangerous debuffs. Nobody. Like, it's the same issue over and over again. The talent system is great, and it's probably going to go down as one of the best things they ever did in the game. But my God, it's just created this crazy power creep situation. So I don't know, man. Holy Pally definitely needed healing nerfs, so I'm with that. Damage nerfs too. I'm kind of not like, I did not feel like their damage was out of control. Certainly not Consecrate. I did not feel like that was any way out of control. But I guess this talent, which I wasn't actually taking, is a big part of it too, which also being nerfed. Red Pally getting big buffs. I don't know if they need it, man. Red's been really good. But anyway, yeah, the changes here for priests in general. This is probably like the only change on this list that I'm like actually really pleased with, because it's nerfing their utility. That's what they need. They don't need a damage nerf. They really don't, which I guess they kind of do, but they don't really need, like, and first of all, is this like an AoE damage nerf? I don't know anything about the spell, the specialization and the spells, but that does not, at first glance, that does not look like a damage nerf that is going to help them in key, that is going to hurt them in keys. But either way, this is the kind of thing they should be doing, and maybe they will now, because they said, they've said like this week kind of thing for this week. I don't know if that means there's more coming, but yeah, let me know what you guys think, especially if you're kind of like at my level, doing like between like 20, let's just say like if you're in the 20 range and you're kind of seeing like 25s as maybe a progression point. You're not doing 27s and up. Do you think that this is going to change the game? Do you think this is a good change? Like I said, like, all these people re-rolling to these specs, this is our optics nerfs. Do you feel like you will unre-roll? Like if you're one of the people who did, do you think it's going to change the meta? Do you care? I guess maybe also is the bigger question, because I frankly just kind of don't. Other than Ogvoker, I really don't think it's egregious now. And like I said, I lived through times where we did 2 tanks in challenge modes in WoD. Like every key needed 2 enhancement shamans, a hunter, and 2 tanks. Like that was, there's been very strictly designed metas in the past, and the game has been just as imbalanced as it is now in the past. The Only issue is Ogvoker. That one is a huge wrench in everything and unlikely to ever be properly tuned. It's just a lot of mess that they added, and I like it. It's a cool concept for a role-playing game, but we know a lot of people playing that game too. So let me know what you're thinking about all this. I am eager to see the comments in this one.